What's happening, guys? Steve here, Cars with Steve, and today we're going to be doing another head-to-head video. This time we're going to be taking a look at the 2020 Ford Escape, and we're going to be comparing that to the 2020 Ford Edge. Now, the reason why I put this video together is because you're asking yourself the question, should I consider looking at the 2020 Escape or the Edge? Which one makes more sense? So let's dive into it, have a little bit of fun. But before we get started, guys, I keep on telling you, make sure that you subscribe to the channel. And the reason why is because of this. Oh yeah, that's right, $10 Amazon gift card, first person who claims it gets it. First come, first serve. So we're gonna dive right into it, have a little bit of fun. Let's see what these vehicles are all about. All right, so starting off, let's take a peek at the Escape right now. So one thing to point out, we are looking at the SEL trim level of both vehicles. What that means is that we've got the ability to have the ActiveX seating material. Now, the ActiveX seating material in these things, guys, it's essentially a pleather seat. Now, there are a couple similarities between both of the vehicles. The big difference is going to be the size of it. So how much trunk space do you need, and how much space do you need inside of the cabin? So a couple things to point out right from the get-go, a few similarities inside of these things. As we can see, first and foremost, we do have our backup camera. That's going to be standard on both vehicles. We've also got the reverse sensing system. So our sensors there and there, and we've got our sensors across the back of the Escape as well. So a few things that are very similar towards these vehicles. A few other things to point out that are going to be standard. We've got the blind spot system. So blind spot indicators on both vehicles lets us know if anybody's entered the blind spot on either side. Those things are going to highlight orange if somebody's done that. Both vehicles also do have the lane keeping system. So the ability to keep you in your lane, it essentially is going to recenter you, or it's going to shake the steering wheel. Looking at the size difference between these things. So we've got the size of the Escape SEL, and then in comparison, we've got the size of the Edge SEL. So as you can see, they're very, very close from a size perspective. You're a little bit wider, you're a little bit deeper in the Edge, I should say, in comparison to the Escape. But look at that, a little bit wider, it is deeper in comparison. A few other things to note is that when it comes to lowering the seats, in the Edge, it is going to be a power down and then manual up. In comparison, in the Escape, in order to be able to get the seats down, it is a manual process. Oh, I guess it helps if the door is unlocked. There we go. All right, so manual process in order to be able to get this down. Gotta fold down the top first, crank that down. As you can see, it is a manual process. So manual up and manual down. And when we take a look at the Edge in comparison, power down, manual back up. So a few small differences between these things. Now, when it comes down to the actual body styling of them, these things look really, really nice. And I love that I chose blue on blue while I'm wearing blue, by the way. But take a look at these things, left versus right. So we've got the Ford Edge on the left versus the Ford Escape on the right. So the Ford Escape has gone through its facelift. That's why it's got this new look, that bubble look out to it, because it's in its facelift year. The Edge is not there as of yet. Couple more years to go. Now, when it comes down to power choices between these things, you've got two different choices when it comes down to the Escape. It's either going to have a 2-liter or a 1.5-liter EcoBoost, so a turboed engine. So it's going to be a 1.5-liter turbo or a 2-liter turbo. In comparison, the Edge SEL only has a single engine choice, only one engine choice in the SEL. It's going to be a 2-liter turbo. The specs for both vehicles are going to show up here. Now, having said that, the Edge SEL does have the ability, the Edge model has the ability to go up to 2.7-liter turbo. However, you do need the ST version of the Edge in order to do that. So we are comparing apples to apples to the SEL in both vehicles. So for namesake, we're going to say you've either got a 1.5-liter or a 2-liter turbo in the Escape, strictly a 2-liter turbo inside of the Edge. Both beautiful vehicles. Both vehicles are going to be able to fill up on the left-hand side, so on the driver's side, and they both are a capless system. Now, one thing to note about the fuel requirements in these things. So it is recommended from the factory to use regular 87 octane. Now, having said that, When it comes down to the performance of vehicles, the actual true rating of the horsepower and the torque in these things, it is measured using premium fuel, so using a 91 or a 93 octane. So you're not necessarily going to get the true performance out of it using regular 87 gas. Now, having said that, will you notice a big difference? If you go from 87 to 91, absolutely you'll notice, but that doesn't mean you have to use that higher octane fuel. If you need to save a couple bucks at the pump, you can get away with just using regular 87 gas. Now, when it comes down to sizing and spacing in this thing, we're going to start off in the edge. So what I'm going to do, the escape, I should say. Well, let's take a look. So the escape, oh, that's tight. Oh, wait a minute. The seats go back. How beautiful is that? Now, that's something that is unique in the Escape. I love the fact that they've done that. So as you can see, we've now got a ton of room. Where that really comes into play is if we need a little bit more spacing in the back. So we can move both seats. The 60/40 bench, we can move that forward if we need to. Really, really straightforward. Just underneath our feet there, we can move it back and forward, really straightforward. So you can have a little bit more space. Now, when it comes down to it, look at this foot room. So I've still got a ton of foot room. I've still got a little bit of knee room in the top by my legs and overhead. Now this one does have the sunroof, but as you can see, I've got about an inch roughly of headspace above me. So those taller people that are sitting in the back seat can sit knowing that they can comfortably fit in the back. Really, really nice. Now, if you need somebody with a little bit more headspace, get them into the front seat or pop open the twin panel sunroof in order to be able to get them to do that. A couple other things to point out in the back of the Escape. We've got some cup holders. We can lock that in up or down. We've got our fan control, and we've got a couple of USB ports in the back as well. So very, very straightforward. Now let's jump into the edge and do a comparison for the size test. There we are. So right from the get-go, as you can tell, as I pop this thing open, you can tell there's more space to it. Jumping inside, super comfortable. Now, one thing to note, so we cannot adjust the seat in the edge. The edge essentially is fixed into place. So that's definitely something to consider. Now, having said that, this seat is set up for somebody that's 6 feet tall, and I still do have knee room in the back. So you will get a little bit more room in the Escape, just kind of by the initial look of it. But having said that, you still do have a ton of space. There's still room in the back, and I've got a little bit more space overhead. So I've got about an inch and a quarter, inch and a half roughly overhead space in comparison. Same thing, this one, if it does have the twin panel sunroof, you're gonna lose a little bit of headroom from the get-go. So if you've got a taller passenger that needs to sit in the back, get them to sit in the middle seat instead, because they'll have a little bit of extra head clearance room. Now, a couple other things to point out on the back of this thing, we do have cup holders in the back as well. Nice and straightforward. Crank that back up and lock it into place. We've got our fan control. We've got a little storage spot. And we've also got a few things. We've got a cigarette lighter adapter, as well as a traditional wall outlet. So you can plug a traditional wall outlet into the back of this thing. So spacing of these two things in the back is not really different. It is a little bit of a wider vehicle in comparison. So if you have to get 5 passengers in this thing, it will be slightly more comfortable in the Edge in comparison. Now, a few other things to point out. In the Escape, power up and down, it's not a foot activated liftgate, so we can go power up and down there or using the key fob. Now, having said that, same thing in the Edge. So we are power up and down on the SEL trim level. Moving it to the Escape, let's take a quick peek at the front seats and see what those look like. Now, really, really nice. Taking a look at the side, we do have our numbers on the side, so if we ever need to get emergency access to the vehicle, we can do that by entering the 5-digit factory combination. Jumping inside, we do have our seat memory buttons. We've got our power windows up and down. We've got the ability to adjust our seat. So we can go up, down, forwards, backwards. We can adjust the backrest, and we've also got power lumbar support. Hopping inside of this thing, we've got our auto lights. So I always recommend keeping the auto lights on. It's automatically going to turn the daytime or the nighttime running lamps on as we get into the middle. So we do have our Sync 3 system. Sync 3 system is going to give you the ability to use Android Auto and Apple CarPlay, which is really, really great. So if you don't have factory navigation, this one does have it built in because it's got the Copilot 360 package. If you got one that didn't have the navigation built in, you can still use your cell phone. You can use either Android Auto or Apple CarPlay. So you can rely on the maps on your phone in order to be able to get those rocking. As we drop down, we've got our volume rockers. We can manually tune the station. We can tune the station using our steering wheel as well. Dropping down a little bit, we've got our 4-way blinkers. We've got a single zone climate control. Now this one also does have a package that gives you the heated seats and the heated steering wheel. We can choose where the fan's blowing. We've got our air conditioner. Now, one thing that's also new to the Escape in this year is this rotary dial. So our traditional gear shifter has gone away. So we've got our park, reverse, neutral, drive, and then our low gear as well. Moving up a little bit, we've got our traditional USB port, as well as a cigarette lighter adapter. Moving down, we've got our cup holders, parking brake, our auto hold. The auto hold setting, if it's on and you're stopped at a light, you can take your foot off the brake and the car won't move. We've got our different driving modes and our engine start-stop button. A little bit of space inside, as well as a USB-C connector. Now, when it comes to the steering wheel, we do have a manual adjusting steering wheel that is telescopic, so we can go up, down, in, and out, lock it back into place when we're set to go. Let's shut this door for a second so we can go through a few of the other features. Now, we're gonna press OK on the steering wheel, get rid of those messages. All right, very straightforward. So we do have the adaptive cruise control in this vehicle. The adaptive cruise control, guys, is essentially a set it and forget it cruise control. So a couple things to point out. We've got a few lanes that are showing up, as well as that cruise control set. Now the lanes, as we press this button, what that's going to do is that's going to determine how close or how far away we are from the vehicle that's in front of us. Once you're up to the speed that you'd like, you're just going to press the set button up or down, and that's going to set it. Guys, it's essentially a set it and forget it cruise control, which works incredibly well. The reason why this thing works so well is, let's say if you're cruising on the highway going a buck 20, car in front of you starts to slow down, yours will automatically brake as well. If they get out of the way or if they pick up speed again, yours will automatically get you back up to your set speed. So I absolutely love the adaptive cruise control system. I do recommend using it if the vehicle's equipped with it. A couple other things to point out, we do have our voice button. Using our voice command button, we can do a couple things, such as changing the station. We can also navigate, we can make phone calls and things like that by pressing this button. We've got the ability to skip stations, we can answer or hang up on a phone call. Along the side, we've got the ability to turn our rear windshield wiper on or off. We can control how much fluid is showing. We've got our rockers for our turn signals. We can turn the high beams. We can essentially flip the high beams on or off. And then on the very end of it, we've also got the ability to turn on our lane keeping system. So the lane keeping system, as I mentioned, works one of two ways. So the first way is it's going to give you a little bit of a steering wheel shake. So if you start to veer over into a lane without signaling, it'll shake the steering wheel. Other option that you've got is to have it recenter you and pull you back into your lane. Now that system doesn't, the lane centering system, the lane keeping system, I should say, doesn't turn on until you hit about 60 kilometers an hour or so. It's about 62 kilometers an hour, and we know it's on because this is going to highlight green. And that's when you know the system is actually activated. So very, very straightforward, guys. The interior of this thing looks really, really nice. Looking at the very top, we've got a few buttons in order to be able to open up the twin panel sunroof, which again, same thing, looks absolutely beautiful in this thing. I love it. I love how far, and it just opens this thing up completely. So whether or not you decide to get the sunroof, again, really a matter of personal preference. If you don't normally get the sunroof, you can save yourself about 1,700 bucks. So it's really a matter of preference there. But I love the styling. I love the new look of the Escape, what they've done to it. It's a really, really long overdue and a really beautiful facelift that they've given this thing. Now let's do check seat for occupants. Well, we might have somebody in the back. We definitely don't. There's nobody in the back there, so it's unique. I've actually never seen that message come up before. I really, really love that Ford's done that. That's a great safety feature, especially if you have kids that you've got in this thing. I'm not lying, I've never seen that thing actually pop up before, so that's really, really cool knowing that Ford's got that built into the vehicles now. Now, hopping into the Edge. So as you can see, very, very similar from a button perspective, with one caveat. So the SEL version of the Escape has the seat memory. The SEL version of the Edge does not. You'd have to go to the titanium or the ST trim level. We've got our traditional window adjusting buttons, and where we've got our up and down windows. Same thing, we've got our power adjustable seats, so we can move the seats forwards, backwards, up and down. We can move the backrest, and we've also got our power lumbar support. Hopping inside the vehicle. So a couple things to point out right from the get-go. As you can see, it's very different. Very, very different than the Escape that we just finished looking at. The screen is set up a little bit differently. Some of the buttons on the inside are a little bit similar in comparison, but they are slightly different as well. Now, having said that, the navigation, as we can see here, built-in navigation does not come standard. It is an option. Very similar to the Escape. You've got the ability to turn that on or off. You can add it in. When it comes to the home screen, we've got the ability to either turn on our heated seats using the buttons there, as well as our heated steering wheel, or we can drop down to turn them on instead. We've got dual zone climate control. Now that's something that's unique to the Edge. The Escape SEL does not have that. So if you've got a driver passenger that like different temperatures, you've got the capabilities to be able to do that in this vehicle. Couple other things to point out as we drop down. We've got a couple USB ports. The Edge SEL also has, I don't know if you can see it there, but it's got a wireless charging pad. Dropping down, a few other things to point out. We've also got a cell phone holder. We've got a couple cup holders. We've got a little cell phone holder at the back as well. We've got our rotary dial, so very similar to what we just finished seeing in the Escape. So we've got our rotary dial in order to be able to adjust what gear we're in, whether it's park, reverse, neutral, drive, or S, which is our sport mode. So sport mode is essentially that manual mode in the vehicle. We've got our parking brake, and we've got our auto start stop button. Now, as we jump up to our steering wheel, a couple other things to point out. So we've also got our voice activated button. So that's the button that we would use in order to be able to either make phone calls, change the radio station, or if we want to navigate if the vehicle's equipped with our factory navigation. A couple other things on the steering wheel. Same thing, we've got our adaptive cruise control, so we can turn the system on or off. Very, very different in comparison, so we can see the adaptive cruise button there instead. And as we go, as we press this button, that's going to be our distance indicator, letting us know how close or how far we are away from the vehicle in front of us. We've got our lane centering system as well. So we've got our lane centering system. We can tell it's on when we've got the bowling alley lanes that show up. But again, same thing, the system might be activated, but it doesn't actually turn on until we hit about 62 kilometers an hour. A couple other things to point out on our right turning stick. We've got the ability to run our windshield wipers, our back and front. On our left stick, we've got our traditional signals. We can flip our high beams on, and we've also got the ability to turn the lane keeping system on or off as well. So turning this system off, let's actually turn the adaptive cruise off for a second. Along our side, we've also got our auto buttons. So again, as I mentioned, always make sure you keep it on this auto setting, that auto A. That's automatically going to turn on our daytime or our nighttime running lamps, just depending on how bright it is outside. Looking up overhead, as I mentioned, this one also does have the sunroof in it. Again, same thing, sunroof is an option in this thing. You don't need to get it, but if you love sunroofs, this thing is beautiful. I love the look of the sunroof inside of the Edge and the Escape. They both look absolutely beautiful. When it comes down to the seating material, it is the ActiveX material in the SEL version of the Edge as well as the Escape. So they are very similarly built from that perspective, but the Edge is wider. It's a bigger vehicle. It just feels bigger on the inside in the cabin. So which one you go with is ultimately going to depend on your comfort level. If you're a little bit of a smaller driver, the Escape is probably a good choice for you. If you're, if you're a little bit of a bigger driver, or if you've got a larger family, if you're going to have 5 passengers, it might be ideal to look at the Edge because you physically have more cabin spacing and you've got more spacing inside of the trunk of the vehicle. But at the end of the day, they're both great vehicles. So then the question then comes down to, which one do I pick? Which is a great question, because if we look, the MSRP on the Escape SEL, you're around $38,000 roughly, depending on how you have it configured. In comparison, you're around $47,000 for the Edge SEL. Again, same thing, depending on how you have it configured. If you want the navigation, that's going to be $800. If you want the sunroof, you're about $1,700. If you need those leather seats instead of the cloth seats, that's an option for you as well. So which version of the vehicle you go with is really your call, but at the end of the day, if you're looking at saving a little bit of money, the Escape is a great vehicle. If you're not the type of driver where you need to be the fastest, look at the 1.5 liter engine. It's still got a lot of power for a small engine. It's a 1.5 liter engine. It's got 3 cylinders in it. So it's still plenty powerful for such a small engine. When you jump up to the 2 liter, you're going to get some more horsepower out of it and a little bit more power in comparison. When it comes down to the Edge, same thing, beautiful vehicle, but where I would really recommend the Edge over the Escape is if you need more size. If you're going to be going on more distance trips and things like that, packing more things in, the Edge is an excellent choice as an option. But which one you end up going with is ultimately dependent on you. If you guys have any questions, please make sure you drop it down below. If you enjoyed the video, please ensure that you like it and consider subscribing to the channel as well, because it really does help me grow. Until I see you guys next time, stay safe.